All right, am I actually going to do this? Well, hello, Shiny Crafty People. It's Tim Totten here, and welcome back to the channel. Now, about a year ago, more than a year ago, I was in Wisconsin at Corey Kruger's quilt shop, and I showed just for a split second I'll show it to you right now. This lovely kite that someone had made him and put on the wall there. I'll put her name to the person who made it for him because it's in that video, but I don't remember at the moment. And I've been asked over and over and over again from so many people, including my dear friend Pat Dye, when are you gonna make the kite? And spoiler alert, I did. I made a kite. I didn't make it exactly like the one that she made, and frankly, mine's maybe a little more colorful. Hers is a little bit different quilting pattern, but I did make this out of a bunch of a jelly roll of different fabrics. And so I'm going to show you a super long video of how to make the 2.5 inch, these are now 2-inch squares, the 2-inch square background, how to put the binding on, how to put the dowels in the back, how to add the tail and the little ribbons. This video is going to take forever, but it's a step-by-step tutorial of everything. Now, if you wanted, and I'm going to tell you this at the end, you could have literally just used like a pre-made quilt to do this, but I wanted to have the fun of doing this somewhat random pattern. So why don't you join me down here at the cutting table and we'll get blown away by this amazing project. So so for this project, I'm going to need a bunch of little 2-inch squares, what I'm going to do. And I'm going to use this jelly roll that I purchased, and it has a bunch of really beautiful colors, so I want to do that. I'm going to use a white just piece from a jelly roll to make the tail. I'll make a long tail, and we'll make some more fabrics to go on that. And then some type of a backing fabric that will also flip over. Now, I'm going to make this 18 inches wide by 24 inches tall. And I've kind of figured I'm going to have a 9x9 sort of, actual triangle at the top, equilateral triangle. And then I'll come down 15 inches on the bottom one to make it more like the kite shape. But what that means, though, with 2-inch squares, I sort of drew this out to give myself an idea. I need 9 strips wide, and I'll need eventually 12 strips tall. Now, I'm going to do a little bit of a bargello quilt idea here to show you how to make this random. So I'm just going to pick a number of strips that I can put together to create this particular idea. So I'll pick out like 9 strips that I really like, and then I will sew them together in a variety, and then we'll cut them apart. So let's get to that point first by finding out 9 strips that I really like from here. So now I'm going to use that for the tail. I'll just set that aside. This is the back. I'll set that aside. I'm going to find 9 colors out of here that I like. And I want to do a bit of a variety, but I also want them to go really well with this blue color. So I want to make sure I pick a few of those blues that will tie it in. So I know this one will definitely tie in with that blue. That'll look really nice. And there's at least maybe one other in here that would tie in really well. So that's about as dark as I want to get on those. So I've got some blue now. Let me go back to the other colors. I've got these other colors. So I think I definitely need some kind of a strong pink color in that. This one has some blue in it too, so I think I'll throw that one over there. Maybe find something a little bit darker. I have 4 colors right now chosen. Maybe I go in here and try to find something that's a little more, this one's got some fun color in it. So that's now 5 that I've thrown out there. This one's got some yellow, 6, 7. There's some green in here, so this is good. 8. And then I said a 9th one. Is there a darker green I can use? Or is that too dark? Or is there not enough light in here? Oof. So hard to tell. Well, you know what? It's my quilt. I'll do what I like. I think I want to put a light blue in there. So now I have all those colors to choose from, and that I'll put together in my strip. And let me get the rest of these out of the way. I'm packing them up to put them away. And then I can go from there. So, all right, I'll finish that and then we'll go into the next part. So I've just haphazardly rolled these back up just to get them out of the way. I'm kind of using these on a variety of projects. I will put a link in the description to this particular jelly roll that I bought on Amazon. So now what I want to do is lay out what sort of design I would like from these. And I'm going to tell you, one of the things I'm going to do right away actually is cut every one of these in half. So you'll see here they're doubled over right here. And I'm just going to go where the fold is and put my scissor right into the fold, if I can open it up, right in there, and just, now I have 2 pieces. So I'm gonna make 2 different sets of this design, because this now gives us a 22-inch piece. In fact, I'm probably gonna have to make this a little bit of a shorter, I needed 24 inches on my design, and these are only gonna be less than that. Now let's see how far they are. They're gonna get me about 21 inches. So my design will actually be 21 inches. Well, that's just the way it goes. Let me lay out 2 sort of layouts of the colors so that I can decide how I want to put them. To make it feel random, I'm going to sew these in strips, but I'm going to sew them strips that are not necessarily the same. I want 2 different sets of strips, right? So this green one can't go right next to that blue one because I already have it up there next to that blue one. So I've got to put something else in between, or a couple of others in between. And you can either do this as you're going, you can just figure it out, or you can say, well, you could do one, you could just do one out and then make sure your second one doesn't match it at all. But that would be up to you, whatever makes the most sense to you to do. And I'll play with these once I organize them. I will play with them to figure out what makes sense to me. Put that bright color up there. And here I think I'll put that in between. And I'm gonna do all the salvage edges down here. A little more in between. Maybe we get a bright pink one in here now. Really, the hard part with making things random is like not letting your brain get too focused on whether it's random or not. Like, you have to let your brain not think about what random is. Because if you start thinking about it and trying to force it to be random, it won't be random because your brain will make it non-random on its own, which is problematic. So you see here, I don't have 2 of the same thing in these designs. I don't have 2 of anything the same. If I can get out far enough to show you. So now I'm getting a little bit in. So what I think I'll do is I will move one out of the way and just do one particular one here. And then I'll make sure the other one doesn't match it. Just cutting everything in half. And in fact, what I could be doing is, instead of worrying about whether this is 20 something inches long enough, I could just be focusing on making sure that I'm gonna have 18 pieces here going down, and times 2, that's 36 inches. So these are 2.5-inch strips, and they're gonna become, once they're sewn together, they will become just 2-inch strips. So if they get to 2-inch strips, then 2 inches times 18 of these is 36 inches, more than enough for the piece I'm designing. So what I can do here now is just go ahead and start laying this out as using the others and just creating my full length of that to go together. And I might just do that. So instead of worrying too much about whether it's organized enough, I'll just start doing this. Bring this down. Maybe put that dark one up there. Bring this down. Bring in one of the other ones. Yeah, I like that. I think that's what we'll do. All right, so now what I've got to do is start sewing all of these together. Sew 2 and 2 and 2 and 2 and 2 and 2 as we go all through. I'm going to have a lot of scrap left over on this. This is my way of doing it. Figure out how it's the best way for you. You might not want to do quite this much, but I actually have a plan for the rest of the scraps, which I'll show you in another video. All right, let's get going. And I'm probably going to fast forward through most of this. All right, so now that I've gotten that, where I put all those together, I realized that I want this side stitch, so that opens up the way it was. Or actually, so it can open up like this. So what I'm gonna do is just flip this entire thing over, because then it'll let me start sewing here going down. So I flipped the whole thing over to sew that way. So let me go back to the machine. I've got all of those piled up, and that's how we'll go to the machine. Come along with me. Below. So now I have my pile of those strips, and I'm just gonna pull off the top two that are right side facing each other and start sewing. I'll put the rest over to the side though, so I don't mess with them. And I'm just going to, this is the straight edge that got put at the top. And I'm just gonna start going on all of them. And in fact, I'm just gonna assembly line sew them one after the other. What that means when I get to the end here, I'm just going to leave it in the machine, and I'm gonna put the next one up right underneath it. So I've got the next one ready to go, right sides together. And just go right down that next edge, just put it right under that presser foot and just keep going. Just keep sewing. Now you'll notice that these, a lot of jelly rolls have this edge that's been cut with a set of pinking shears. It's to keep it from unraveling. And if you feel uncomfortable with that, you can either cut it off, although that's a lot of extra work, or you can just make your seam allowance a little bigger than 1/4 of an inch. This is a 1/4 inch seam allowance. So I'm just pulling these off, and this one was the last one that I did. And so I will kind of open it up to make sure we're going in the right direction. Ooh, losing these over on the side here. Is this sort of the way I intended? I'm not gonna... Looks so far like we're getting the right sort of a look to it as I went through. All right, so what I am gonna do is go ahead and press these rather than get ahead of myself. So let me finish cutting them apart. I'm just bringing them up. I'm just cutting apart where they were stitched together. There's a whole pile of them over here. There should be 9 sets. All right, then I'll get out my pressing mat and we'll start that process. Now, the way we're gonna do that, I just flipped all those over. The way we're gonna do that is take the very top one and bring it down here to our pressing surface. And I'm going to press that seam flat. And then I will open this up, just finger press it with my fingers. And by pushing it back that way, we get the fabric, the fold will be toward the top material here. I just want to do them all the same. This is going to make it a lot easier later. All right, and I'm gonna do the next one. And I can do it right on top of this one if I want. Just stagger where those seams are, so you're not right on top of each other. You're not wanting to put it right on top of each other. Now, to be fair, if I wanted to be really more careful about this, I would just move each one after I do this. You also don't want this thing to twist. You don't want to get it turned like this. You want to keep it very straight along there if you can help it. So I'll just move those down. Bring the next one up. So I will do all of these and then we'll come back. Okay, so those are all finished, and I'm gonna now lay these out just like I did before. I'll lay them out in the pattern. Now, I will tell you, I didn't do this. but it would make more sense for you to take a pre-snap to make sure that you actually have them laid out in the correct order. Mostly what I'm looking at is to make sure that I don't have two colors, two of the same fabrics right on top of each other, but also that not everything is exactly the same number apart either. I want it to have a randomness to it. That's going to be important to me. And now if I decide this is too much blue all going together, I can decide to remove or move some of that, right? And I have several more here to get in the bottom. So if I felt that was too much blue, I could say, well, I really want to get a little less blue. Maybe I'll swap out this one for that one and then move this other one down, you know, further down. So those are the plans I'm going to look at. I'm happy with the rest of this. I don't have too much close together. So I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing I did before. But this time I'm going to do a little different. I'm going to flip the top. No, I'm going to flip this up, knowing that I'm going to stitch there. That's where this is the nice flat starting edge that I want to start sewing on. So I can flip those over. I'm going to start here, here, here when I sew. Let me get my rest of my colors out. And because there's 9 of these, I'm actually going to have one left over that's not going to get sewn on, which is perfectly fine. Let me go ahead and put those together, and I'll have this one left over that's going to go at the bottom at some point, but I'll worry about that later. So what I will do is I will go ahead and stack all of these up, and I'm going to start sewing here down on all of them. And I know that when I go to put this up, that's going to be the very top one. That'll help me figure out which order these go in. Let's go to the sewing machine. All right, so just like I did before, I'm going to cut these apart, put them back in order. Remember, I said when I flipped that up, I was going to have that dark fabric at the top, so I do have that. So let's get our pressing mat down here and start doing that. Let me go a little backwards of what I did last time. Remember, I want to keep all of those seams going up. I'll show you the back of this once I press this, and you'll see what I mean by that. You'll see on the back I have all the seams going the same direction. So that's the very top one there. And now I have a group of 4. Fun. So now we've got our design going, right? And so now I'm going to flip this one over to that one, and I'll stitch down that length, and then I'll do this one over to this one and stitch down this length. All right, let's go ahead and do that, and I'll be right back here. And here they are sewn together. So we have that top one, and we have this lower one down here. So that'll open, and I go ahead and press those, right? So let me press those first. Now I still have this one piece I need to add at the bottom, and I want to do that because I want to have an odd number. Well, it's not really an odd number, but I want to have a number that will allow me to really change up how random these things are. So I will, wrong one. Let me open up the top one here after I've pressed that seam. And again, I'll finger press it just like I did before. So it keeps the fabric going up, the seam going up. And I did set that one already, so I will finger press. So I'm going to go ahead and sew these two together along this edge. And then once I've done that, I will iron it, come back, open this up, and put this one along this bottom edge. All right, I'll accomplish that and come back and I'll show you all of this laid out and what we have to do next. All right, here we go. I've done that whole piece. It's very long. You can't even see the whole thing. But what I should have pointed out is you really need to make sure that you're happy with the way that these go together, the top and the bottom ones, because we're actually going to now fold it in half and sew it into a long tube. We're going to do a tube. So I'm going to get those edges lined up and I'm going to sew this all along this edge to make a tube. And then we will try our best to press that seam the right way. And then we will start cutting this apart and showing the magic. Well, okay, I've got this tube ready to go, and I need to make sure that when I open this up, that I've got it properly, all the seams going in the same direction. So I'm going to get my fingers in there and finger press that open. And then I can either go under here and press it, or I can fold it to where I can feel that underneath. It's right here underneath there, and I can press it in place through the other. It's kind of like I'm having a press cloth. But either way, what that should do is give me all of the seams now going in the same direction. So you see how I have all these seams now all going in the same direction coming down. All right. What we are going to do is something fun. This is going to be so much fun. You're going to just be completely blown away. I always am when this works. This is modifying what's called a bargello quilt. It's this very specific idea and design of quilts. But I'm not going to actually make this a bargello quilt where we do these waves and twists. I'm going to use it instead to make this quite random. And the way I do that is going to flip every other one. So I'm going to come here and just square up the edge. I have folded this and put a seam right along the bottom edge of a line on my cutting mat. And then I'm going to go over here and square up this side. And a bargello, sometimes, I'll show you a picture of a bargello on the screen right now. Sometimes you vary the width of your cuts to give it this fun shape. We're not going to do that at all here. I'm going to cut 2.5-inch square strips because that's how big we started with. Now this ruler has 2 inches plus a 1/2 inch here, so I know this is 2.5 inches, but check your ruler and make sure you do it the correct way. I cut a 2.5-inch strip there. Then I'm going to cut a 2.5-inch strip here. And I'm going to try to leave them just in order, just exactly the way they came, because then we'll change it up in a little bit. 2.5-inch strips. I don't want to manhandle them too much because now I've cut all of the threads in between and the seams are going to get, the seams are now sort of open at each end with just thread. You might want to have done I should have maybe done a little bit shorter stitch length, more like a 2 or even less than that on these. However, I'm going to be real careful when I sew these together. I'm not going to stretch them out too far or anything. Remember, I'm going to make a lot more of this than I need to make my actual piece. But I just wanted to show you a fun technique to do this. Okay, flip that around. 2.5-inch strips. Now, you may have seen me before talk about how I want to press some things one direction and the other parts another direction so that when you put them together, they will fit into each other. Well, right now, if I sewed these back together, they would just all be facing the same direction. So if I turn every other one around, now they are at opposite directions. And that means when I go to sew these together, if I just want to sew them together right like this, I would have this seam going, you can't see that because I don't have it in there. This seam's going up and this seam's going down, and those two seams would just stick right into each other and make a perfect seam. It would be amazing. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to get a seam ripper, and I'm going to open up one of these. It's going to be crazy. You're just going to be completely blown away when you see what we do. So I've got my trusty seam ripper out, and I'm just going to go right here in the middle and take out this seam right in here. And this makes that look. Now, if I took this seam out, then another middle seam, it would be the same exact look. It would look like we're just trading places. And I don't want that. So I'm gonna have to take the seam out from another spot. So I'm gonna take it out further down. I'll take one out here, and I can actually just, because I made them so thin, I can now, when I put them together, it's not quite so, now these are a little close because I didn't go quite far enough. So maybe on the next one, I'm gonna go more like halfway around. And when I open these up, we're gonna get a little bit different variety. Same thing here, maybe I go further up this way and open it. And then maybe I have to really just go right on the end. You might start to get a little bit of a standard sort of shape if you do this. You have to be aware. And this one put two of the same ones together. So I might move this a little bit out of the way and come back here and say, okay, what do I want? I can audition different designs. Maybe I want that design to be here, right? I want that to be there. So I'll come down to the end and figure out which one I should take out. And that would open up. There we go. Not so the same. Maybe I can put this one back in now. Actually, I got to make sure the seams were going the same direction. Those two seams are going the same direction. So I'm going to have to change that. Change it up. So maybe I change this one to over here. Now let's put the same ones next to each other. Well, it is fun to figure out how to do this. You're just playing with it to get them in the right position. And these two are right next to each other. Ugh. Let me flip a few things around. I'll put this one here. Let's put two next to each other. All right, let me just keep going, taking things apart and seeing what happens. And I'll play with them. I've got them all done. So now I'm going to check which ones go which direction. So this goes up and those go down. So I can put this one next to that one. Make sure I don't have two right next to each other. I don't. They step up a little bit. So those will go into each other. And then let's put this one in that area. Yeah, I'm okay. Well, there's two next to each other. Well, we'll flip it this way and put it here. And maybe we flip this one this direction and come there. Still doing two of the same ones. I did a few of these in the wrong place. So what I can do is I could slide it down or maybe slide it up so that we didn't get the same, and I can take off a couple from the top and move them down to the bottom. Now remember, I only need 24 inches out of this. So in fact, if I did it like that, I'm still gonna get the amount that I need. So I'm gonna use this strategy more than another strategy to get it angled where I want. I think that's gonna make more sense. And make sure my seams are going the same direction. Oh, there we go. Those are going down, these are going up. All right, I'm almost done. That was a momentary lapse in what would work, but it is working fine. Okay, I have all those laid out the way that I want to. And so now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna kind of square this up a little bit by just making sure that I have just enough on the top that I need. So I'll move all of these down and line them back up still. All right, so I'm gonna go to that end over there, so you'll see me flip around. And most of these, I don't have too many extra squares. I've got an extra square here, so I'll take that off. I've got a couple extra squares on this one. Take those off, and I've got an extra square on that one. So now all of this is lined up, and I can start to sew these together. So what I'll do is I'll flip these over and make sure I've got seams going in opposite directions, which I do. So I'll slide that off. Same thing here. Make sure my seams are going in opposite directions. And those will come here. Seams are going in opposite directions, which they are. One's here, and the last two. Seams are in opposite directions. Perfect. Now I could start sewing at the other end so that it's folding down. I'm sewing over these stitches, but I don't want the bottom ones, which are going in the opposite direction, to get messed up. So since I'll be able to see the top ones, I can put them in the right position. So we'll start sewing, and I'm gonna put these into the machine. Remember, I folded this one over to the top, so I wanna go ahead and sew down this side. So I'll stack these on top of each other, and when I lower them into the machine, they're gonna start from this position. Again. Okay, part two, take two. Like I said, I like doing it with this on the top, the folds going up on the top, because I can watch and make sure they don't get twisted the wrong way. Like, because it's possible on the bottom that if these were going up on the bottom, they might get pulled and then we'd have a problem. So I know on the bottom, they're gonna keep going flat down because they're laying against the machine and they have nothing to flip them the other direction. So I like that. And what I'm doing is just making sure that I can still feel these locking into each other. And what that's gonna do is when we go to open it up, you'll see that all of those little seams are gonna just be perfect points, perfectly pointed by doing that. And again, I got one a little flipped in there. And the nice part is as I sew these strips to make now two strips, a 2-strip unit, then when I go to sew two 2-strip units together, they'll lock into each other again the same way because we made sure that each row was alternating between whether the seams were going up or the seams were going down. Make sure you keep those tails going underneath your presser foot. Don't let it pull the seam down. And I'm not worried about the edges the ends as much because, frankly, I'm cutting this thing sort of out of the middle, and I'm going to have a lot of scrap left over, which is nice. Now, again, I'm going to get that. This very first one is important. You've got to make sure that these lock into each other the way they're supposed to here, because it's going to dictate how all of the others do as they go down. You get off by 1/8 of an inch here, all the rest will be off, or you'll have to stretch something and pull it to get it back into the proper alignment. And I don't want to have to do that. I want this to be super easy to go through. So back here at the pressing table, I need to decide what order I'm gonna, how I'm gonna press these. I'm just gonna do the same thing I did before. I'll press them across and then just open up toward the top. It doesn't matter, as long as they all get pressed the same direction, we're fine. There's nothing wrong with pressing them. They don't have to get pressed in any particular order. Just gonna press them all to the same direction. So all of the seams will be going this way. I don't want to get it out of order either here. Perfect. Okay, so that's the first one of those is done and out of the way. The next one will do the same thing. All right, so those are now spread out, and I can take an overall look and decide if I'm happy with how these are going, if I need to switch it up at all. Now, because these are now opposite one another, I could flip this entire thing around and I would still have my pieces going in the right direction. So I could even move them, I could say, let's put this one over here. See how that looks. Do I get too many that are the same right next to each other? Put this one here. Do I have too many the same that are next to each other? Could I flip it around? Do it like this. Do I have too many that are the same next to each other? I can flip this one completely around if I chose to. Do I have too many that are the same next to each other? And right now I'm getting, for my width, which I need to be 18 inches, I'm right at about 18 inches on the width. So that's pretty good. But when I sew these together, I'm gonna be off of that 18 inches. Whew. Yeah, becomes a little bit of a question. I might have to make my sizing a little bit different. All right, so what I'm gonna do is find out the right setup, and what I like about this one. It's gonna be about 24 inches long. So do I like that as my 24? I do, I'm good with that. And I could piece together some sides, because remember, I don't have very much in the way of the points are coming to the side to make my wider part. So I could take some of the pieces that I've taken off and I could add those back to the sides if I needed to get my shape going in. So I'm not too worried. I'm gonna have plenty left over here at the bottom, and I could actually take some off of the bottom and add those to the sides. So in fact, I might do that now. I might go ahead and measure that. I want to get 24 inches, which means I can take all of this stuff off at the bottom if I chose to. I could do that. And in fact, I know I'm going to come down at an angle here, so I might just move this entire piece down to like there. I like that. And this entire one could come up completely. Maybe I bring it up to here, right? So I'll just take off this piece at the end. Yeah, that could give me a piece to go on the side here that I would be happy with, getting more width. So let's do that. I'm gonna sew that to this piece over here. I know I'm being crazy, but I'm having to think about how this is gonna work best. And I could twist all of this down, go all this down one. I know I don't need all the way this far at the bottom, so I could take off that. Okay, that's good. And then I could add this piece to the other side of that one. Now I've got plenty of width going to choose what I want to do. In fact, I think I want to bring this up a little bit. So I will take that off too. Perfect. All right. I'm making crazy changes, but I think it's going to work better. All right, so my next step is to go ahead and fold these, flip these over to where I know what's going to be the best way to sew. So I flip this one over here, flip this one over here, and flip this one to here. And I will just stitch all of these down. Let me put this on top of here and this on top of here. Let's go to the sewing machine. So the most important thing I remember when I put these here is how to properly align them, because I've got all these arranged pieces. So since I have all this extra hanging off here, which is fine, I'm just gonna go where the first place that the two stitches come together, and I'll put my finger in there. Now the stitches are coming down, so I'm just gonna make sure on the bottom that I can still feel the seams going up underneath. I wanna make sure they're still going up. And they are, I can feel them still going up underneath. And one of the things to do on your machine to make sure that this doesn't flip anything wrong would be to hold it up. I'm putting my finger down here, but I'm holding up with this to keep those seams from flipping on the edge of my machine. And that now has allowed all those to go together. I'm going to go ahead and put this in position over so that I know where they go. I'm putting it in the right position to start. I don't want to get this wrong. So I moved it over to my cutting surface, to my ironing surface. Now the next two that went together were real easy because it was one full piece. There was no change in how they had to go together. So it's just like the other piece. But again, I've got the pieces underneath are going up now rather than the top one. So I've just got to hold and make sure that goes the way it's supposed to. So again, I'm going to sort of hold the material up and then push down with this finger once it goes past the edge of the machine so it doesn't accidentally flip any of the bottom ones. I'm also not stretching this material at all. I'm not pulling really hard here because that would stretch out and probably flip those pieces from the other side up. Give you an idea what I'm talking about here. You'll see here that I'm trying to hold that up and then keep those things going forward. If I were to pull tight, it would start to pull these down, and I don't want them to pull down. So again, I'm keeping it up. I'm using this hand to hold it up, and I'm pushing down against the base of the machine, the plate of the machine, once I get past the edge. So make sure that one goes underneath properly. What that means is when we open it up now, all of those points have properly fit in. I'm gonna go ahead and put this back in the right place as well so I don't get any question of where that goes. And then the last one here, you'll notice that it's only a little piece on top of a larger piece. So I'm gonna go to the first place these two parts go together and just make sure they're nestled in. And then I'll start sewing off of it and onto the top fabric. All right, and that opens that one up the right way, and I'll put this back in the right place as well. So now I have these back in the right place, I can go ahead and iron them properly. So just all right, so I lied. I didn't do craft paper. I went ahead and did one out of cardboard because the truth is, I think I'm probably going to end up making more of these. So I've cut this out of a stronger piece of cardboard. Now, it literally is just 24 inches and it's 18 inches this way. And the easiest way to do that is to go to cut out a rectangle 24 by 18 and then measure halfway point of the 18 is 9 inches, down 9 inches on either side, halfway across the 18 is 9 inches, and just connect up your 9-inch marks, and it gives you that. Had this been an 18-inch piece, this would have been a square, but since it's 24 inches, it gives us this longer tail. It also means I can take my fabric that I have made here, lay it out, and make sure that my piece actually fits on it, which, voila, it does. So I'm gonna go ahead and line up this piece here, but before I do that, I'm going to put some batting underneath this material so that I can get a proper batting. I'll do it a little bit bigger than the piece, and then once I do that, then it'll be really super easy for me to cut this out exact size. Then I'll cut the blue fabric an inch bigger all the way around, and I'll explain why when we get to that point. All right, let's do the batting and get to that part. Fits, get my rotary cutter, and I can just cut this out. Now, this is where you have to have a little bit of bravery. But I have bravery, so I'm good. I'm brave. Just make sure you don't cut the cardboard. You want to cut right next to the cardboard. And you could lay your rotary cutter on top of this. But then you need a little bit of a thicker blade. And I have a nice sharp blade. So now all this is scrap that I can use for other stuff. I'm just gonna get it out of the way. I'm gonna do a little Eleanor Burns and just toss it over my shoulder. Then 3 or 4. Remember, I'm gonna make that cord for the very tail coming from here out of this material, and then I'll tie those other ribbons onto it. So I'll definitely make 1 or 2 out of this larger blue fabric, and then I'll probably make some others out of this other fabric that we had. So, in fact, maybe if I find one of these colors that has a lot of colors in it, like that one, I could just make all of them out of that, and I think that's what I'll do. That'll be a lot easier than me making several, and I won't have to waste any more material if I don't want to. So we're gonna go ahead and make those parts next, because I need to put this part in here before I fold all this up. So I'm going to basically just double fold this in here and back again and stitch so I have the tail down my kite. And I'm just gonna sketch out what I want these to look like. The best way to do that is just grab a pen and show you what I mean. These are gonna be bows. And the idea of these bows is that they're gonna be about 6 inches or so. You can kind of measure that. And it'll be rounded on the ends and then come up smaller in the middle. A little bit in the middle here so it can be tied. like that. And you'll leave a little opening to turn these inside out. And so you'll need a couple of these. I'm going to make 3 of these. And I won't quite get the full size on this one. But it's all right, it'll be near the bottom. So you get that shape of 3 of those. Let's go to the machine. So I did sew down both sides of that tail that I'm going to use. And these are the bows. I'm just going to cut halfway in between them. You can cut around them a little bit just to get it a little bit trimmed up. I'm not worried about clipping each end of the curves and everything else like that. These are going to be pretty rough. They're meant to look like you just cut little strips of fabric and tied them onto the end of the the tail of your kite, just to give it a look. Now I do have an open space right here in the middle where I didn't sew. So I'm going to turn each of these inside out from that area. Just put sort of my finger in there and I can push those out. And so I'll do each of them that way, and I'll use my really big knitting needle. I have a huge knitting needle here, and I'll just use that to push out, although I did just push a hole in one. And these you can stitch better if you want. You can actually go around the whole edge and edge stitch them. But I want this to look a little bit rustic, so I'm not too worried about doing that. I will not be as careful with those. But you could edge stitch each one of them. You could also make bigger pieces of these. It's really up to you. Get those seams sort of pushed out there just to give it that shape. You might want to come and just stitch this piece closed where you turned it. But that's also up to you. I might just hit this with the iron, press this just to get it nice and flat. And see if I can pull that little part in. You're just trying to make it feel like it's got a little bit of weight. And the reason you squeeze the middle in like this is so that when you go to tie it, it's not so difficult to tie. So if I have this piece and I'm gonna tie one of these on, I can easily just go in, and I don't have as much bulk in the center where it's being tied on. You could also just stitch it on, but I like the look of it being tied. Now the example one that I've referenced from the other video, see how that kind of ties on and becomes a cute tie on there. The other one, example one that I talked about, I don't think she even had fabric ties like this. She just had some pieces. So anyway, I'm going to do both of the other ones just like that, and then I'm going to show you how to put this on. So let's skip ahead. All right, so now I have to tell you I made a huge mistake, which is fun. I did not remember that I have to put some pieces on the back to put some dowels to hold this thing open as like a kite. And so to properly do that, I can't do this flip and fold technique I was going to do. I was going to do that, but then there wouldn't be any space at the back for the pieces to go. So I actually need to stitch just a real small stitch all around here to stay stitch this, and then I can cut this strip off. And then I'm going to make some loops for the back, pieces that will go to hold, and then I'm going to make some binding to go on here. So let's just go ahead and stitch this down first, and then I'll trim it up. So I just went to the machine and get a real simple stitch all the way around that, and I'm going to trim off these pieces. All right, that's now put together here. I do need to make a couple of the triangles that are gonna go on these areas. And the best way for me to do that is I'm basically just going to fold this over, give it a little press, fold over at least, let's say, 1.5 inches to 2 inches. It's about 1.5 inches. And then I'm gonna do a really crazy thing with this, which is I'm going to put this literally right on here, go to that area right like that, okay, and just cut so that I know it matches the other side. It's on there. And I'll go give that a quick stitch in just a moment to hold it on. But I'll do the same thing for the other three corners. Right, I've done that one. Same thing I'll do with this one right here. I'll put that like this. So I know I'm gonna match it. Whew. Did that work? Oh, it worked beautifully. Not cutting any material off from underneath. There's one there. I could, if I wanted, come in and go ahead and cut another, just take that one and use it as an example for this one. Will it fit? Is it big enough? Yeah, it's pretty much big enough. Okay, that's gonna let us put those sticks in there for the back. All right, let's get to binding this thing and adding the tail onto it. So here is the actual thing. And do I want the tail to be quite this long? Look how long this tail would be. Do I want the tail that long? I kind of like it. I think I'll just cut off a few inches, but otherwise the tail will be quite long. And the way we're gonna do this is to put it on the back. We'll bind over it, put it on the back, we'll bind over it and then flip it down and it'll come out from that. I don't want it coming off the front. So I will go ahead and just stitch that on real quick with the machine. You won't even see it, but you'll hear it. So you can bind this whatever way makes the most sense to you. I'm gonna start sort of on this short side down here. And actually I wanna bind it from the other side so I make sure this is the pretty side that I do a good job of doing it. I'm not gonna start the binding. I'm not gonna stitch all the way at the end of the binding. I'm gonna come off a little bit so I can hook my binding together later. And now I am using a white thread. I'm okay with that. But if you didn't like that and you wanted a matching color, please do a matching color. I think that would look better. I'm just sort of doing it to show you the look. I'm also going to be super vigilant and careful about it as I stitch it. Now I'm going to go to the edge here. I'm going to get you a little closer view to see what I'm going to do now. I'm going to bring this off, make sure on the back that it caught everything, which it did. And I'm going to twist it and sort of give this a funky angle here and just keep sewing. I'm gonna give myself a little more of a bite so that it catches everything. When I fold this over, I've decided I'm gonna give myself a little better of a seam allowance here because on the back here it didn't quite catch everything. So I'm gonna go, this is a 1/2 inch binding, and I'm gonna go not quite 1/4 of an inch on the stitch, but this should allow me to catch everything on the back, which it's doing. So as long as I'm consistent all the way around, when I come back to the other side, I'll take out those stitchings on the other side, take out the stitching from up here, and just redo that section. Now these corners aren't too hard to do because they're not as acute as this bottom one's gonna be harder to do, but we'll show you when I get there. So I just sort of open that up, fold it in, and then keep going Now I'm not going all the way to the edge, I'm just going right to where that fold starts. And I'll open this up further down so I can get it in. Now let's double check that all of that connected, which it did. I'll grab a few of these stray fat threads when we get done. Now I'm gonna tell you, just bind this however you think looks best. I'm not worried about, you can make it look whatever you want when you bind it. I like the idea of a very thin strip of material here. I don't want a thick binding, but you could do a thicker binding if you wanted to. Now this end is a little bit more acute of an angle, but it really just works the way the others do. You just tuck it in, tuck it all the way to the end, and then when you fold it, it takes all that extra material. You just want to make sure you shove any extra material in there so that when you fold it, yeah, worked out pretty well actually. And then I'm gonna open it further down here, lay that material in, and then fold it back over. I only have one corner left. So we're doing in good shape. You could, of course, pin all of this so you felt more comfortable with what you were doing. That is up to you. I'm just checking occasionally to make sure it still went across the back the way it was supposed to. Then I'll fold that out just like we're doing the others and keep going. Now here's where they're going to come back together and reconnect. So I'm not going to do all of this. I just want to get past where I'm sewing in that pocket thing. So I've done that. I've gone past that. And I'll just pop this out. Now what I'm going to do is where these come together, I will find a place right about in the middle where they come together, and I will cut the top one straight up, and then the bottom one I'll cut at about 1/2 inch more. Okay, so then that gives me room for those to overlap. And then I'm gonna open these both up, and I'm gonna take out a bit of this stitching, like I said, because I want to redo the stitching in here. So I'll just get my seam ripper in there and start ripping those stitches out because I needed to take them out. Remember, I realized later I wanted to redo that section so it matches the rest. So I'm going to take most of that out, just up to this point where they go together. Okay, done that. I'll pull all those threads out because I need to get all that thread out of there. Okay. So where these two are going to connect to each other, I will peel them both back so I see the pretty sides together, and then open them up. Opening them up so that all of those crease lines match each other. And now I'm going to go in and do a 1/4 inch stitch across that. Just do a 1/4 inch stitch across that, and then test if that's enough. If it's not enough, I'll come in and do a little wider stitch. But when I pull that closed, it pretty much actually goes straight across there. So I'll press that all to one side, get this folded back up, and now I can put it back on and finish sewing this. I'll start right back there where I ended. It would be nicer to use a matching color thread because this white won't be so noticeable. But I think because I have white in the tail, it's gonna look good. And that grabbed all that. It held these in place. And now I can finish the rest of my tail. So let's get that done and I'll show you the whole thing put together. So I went ahead and used just a little saw here and cut couple pieces here. Now I did one here that I thought that was a little bit too small. So I went a little bit harder, a little bit longer on one. And this one doesn't quite, it's a little loose still, but if you put that one in, if I put that one in first and then put the slightly longer one in second, it really holds it in there. And now it's really held in place. And then I'm just gonna take a little strip of fabric, just a little strip of this blue fabric, and tie it along the back, just so this thing really makes sure it holds in place. And I don't want it going anywhere. And that'll hold those two together. And then you can figure out how you want to hang this in a room somewhere. All right. Yeah. And just chop those off. And here is our finished kite with our long, cute tail. Oh, it's so good. Let me show it to you. All right, so there is the finished kite that I made with that cute tail that goes along with it. I gotta put it in front of that for you. And the tail is almost, it's like 38 inches long. I actually think it needs the tail for the size of this kite. You can make a few more pieces to go on it. Like I said, I just think it's kind of cute so far. And I don't think that it's too much repetition of the pattern. Some of those ones you can see repeated, but it's not like a specific pattern, so to speak. So, and there's the back. Now look, if you wanted to hang this, you could add something. I would probably hang something, add it here, so it would hang kind of like this. And you could hook it up, but you could really just put it on a nail through that part. Maybe put two nails, one here and one there, and then it would hold up at an angle. I think this would be a great wall decoration. In fact, that was so much fun. A super long video, took forever, mostly because I'm showing you how to make this beautiful fabric top. But I gotta tell you, I had a lot of fun. I'm glad after a year I finally did this. So I hope you try out this project or something like it. Maybe even use some pre-quilted fabric, you know, one of these pre-made quilts so you don't even have to do all that work, and have a lot of fun. Until next time, folks, stay crafty. Bye for now. Gosh, you know, it is still hurricane season. If I can get enough wind, this is a heavy kite, but it could probably get off the ground.